And welcome into another edition of The Stew with JT Brew. I'm your host, Justin Taylor. We're here on the YouTube Dynasty Pros football channel. Like and subscribe. Make sure you get all the content for me and everyone else on the Dynasty Pros channel. Today, we are talking NFL season-long player prop bets. What we like, what we don't like. Got my boy Dalton Kates in here from Stealing Lines to talk everything preseason. Got to get these bets in now before the season starts. Stick with us. We got a lot of good content coming out here. You're in the stew.
You up on trades and why you move, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sipping through sifting through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stew with JT Brew.
Thanks for joining us here on the Stew. That's Chase Baby, my guy from Champaign, Illinois. Check him out on Bandcamp. Chase Baby on Bandcamp for all his material. Check him out, download it. Support local artists, musicians, always good. Love him putting that together for me for the show. Dalton, appreciate you being on, man. We just did an episode talking about all the teams we like, divisions, over-unders. Now we're in the player props. One of my favorite things to talk about, season-long player props. Got to get them on them early because people forget and they go away. So we got to get in these before the lines get crazy. You want to jump in more than a couple days before the season starts because that's when the lines get crazy. Everybody's betting on them. Let's jump into somewhere. Before we do that, give everybody kind of what you do, where they can find you, and all the stuff you do on social media and all that good stuff.
Yeah, full-time degenerate. I work in the sports betting in the space. I have a Substack right now where I talk about bets, mainly like player props, futures, stuff along those lines, and do some research and try and back up all of my positions with historical evidence or looking at trends for certain teams and also matchup based stuff as well. So I have that. I have a Discord as well where we're putting up picks. Also try and make it as education based as possible to make people smarter bettors because, like I said, it's fun to watch the game and be entertained by your bets, but it's also, in my opinion, more fun to be able to watch fun, entertaining games and also win. So trying to merge that balance between, having a good time while doing it, find winning ways to do it, how to think as a winning bettor. All that stuff is like really important to me and trying to, just talk about that as much as I can through my avenue.
So if I'm going into the season, I'm jumping on one of my, whatever sports book I bet through. What are you looking at now? What's kind of standing out to you? Where are you searching? Where are you looking at as bets you're kind of liking as far as you like the odds or personal bets you're jumping on? Give me a few of those to start off here.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you just like my thought process when I open up a sports book is – I know a lot of people go straight to like week one and look at some of the lines, or they go to Super Bowl, or they go whatnot. I go to like the most ridiculous things ever. So I'm going to, let's say I open up my DraftKings, right? I'm going to player stats and I'm looking at who's going to be the leader in rookie receiving yards, who's going to be a leader in rookie passing yards, who's going to have the most interceptions this year, who's going to be leading the NFC East in rushing yards. So I'm trying to get as many like kind of different markets and unique markets as much as possible and try and kind of catch sports books metaphorically with their pants around their ankles and finding lines that don't necessarily add up to players, talent or upside. And I think using like a fantasy football type of mindset when it comes to understanding upside on players can really help out in those markets as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And then try and find unique ways to play certain teams based on it. Like, for example, If I'm big on the Chargers here, Justin, I know we're both big on the Chargers, finding unique ways to play that. So maybe it's not necessarily betting on the Chargers to win the Super Bowl, right? Because there's a lot of variance at play there. There's a lot of good teams in the AFC. They still might be a good team and not do well. But what I feel more confident in is I feel more confident in their offense and their passing offense specifically. So finding ways to specifically target that aspect of a team. So it'd be like Herbert most passing yards, or Chargers to score the most points, like 16-1, or Herbert to throw for 5,000 yards, or Quentin Johnson over, just like things like that, where honing in on a team and then just getting even more specific within that team of what you like about that team, and then betting on that specifically instead of betting on the team as a whole. Because the more that we can kind of detail what we're betting and why we're betting it and find unique and fun specific ways to bet that, I think we're gonna have more success because again, like you could do all the analysis on the Chargers and their defense ends up sucking, but their offense is as good as you thought, but you bet the Chargers win the Super Bowl, and their offense is still electric, but the defense is the reason they're not getting the Super Bowl. What you bet on, what you are most confident in. So
yeah, I absolutely love that. As a big fantasy football player doing a fantasy football podcast, that's why I love prop bets. I feel like you can double down on the guys you like, the players you drafted, and you can jump in those prop bets and be like, oh, okay, I love this guy. Maybe everybody else doesn't. And you can find those little avenues where you can get some really good odds, bets. And again, I play fantasy football. I bet because it makes the games more interesting. It makes it more fun. So for me, I love the prop bets. Like prop bets are my thing. I love searching, now the X Twitter of like people throwing out random. I'm like, I never thought to look that bet up. So that's my favorite thing is when I see people, I'm like, oh, that's a great bet. Why did I not look that up? Because sometimes you just don't know. So that's some of the things I want to bring up in this show is some random bets that people are like, oh, I never thought about betting that. Now, one of the bets I've jumped on, and I did this after I talked to you, was QB over under touchdowns. And right now on FanDuel, they're letting you parlay this, which in the past on certain books, they would not let you parlay prop bets for the season. You had to take them straight up, but there's certain ones that are letting you take right now. Quarterback touchdowns, they're letting you do right now. I jumped on one the other day after talking to you because you brought this to my attention. I had no idea. I was like, oh, that's a great bet. Why am I not on that? So I jumped on in a 5-leg parlay, QB over touchdown. Right now they have it set at 30 and 35. I took over 30 touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen, plus 2,075 right now. Those 5 guys all to get 30-plus touchdowns. $100 pays you $2,000 on the bet. Give me your thoughts kind of on that idea because you're the one that brought this up to me.
Yeah, I think it's fun to like pick and choose your spots with those guys, and especially for the quarterback position too. You don't have to be as worried about injuries like you would for like doing a parlay with running backs or receivers, because all it takes is one injury and now that entire bet's dead. You could have the greatest process of all time. It could be pacing for it, and then you're in week 15, right? And someone goes down and you miss it because of that. So with quarterbacks, you don't have that as much variance because they just tend to not get hurt as much. They're not taking as many hits, and just in that general sense, they tend to be safer plays in that sense. So finding different offenses that you do like you mentioned the Jaguars, Dolphins, Bengals, Bills, and Chargers as like those teams, like finding ways to bet those together, investing in those teams and those passing attacks that you think will do well. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes, obviously Tua's the one injury concern there, but I loved it because adding him and Lawrence on there was Tua's plus 170, Lawrence was plus 150. So it really bumped up the odds of Herbert, who was minus 165, Burrow was minus 240, and Allen was minus 240. So it really, swung that plus side by adding those guys. And for me, I love that nice little $100 bet. I put 50 on it to win just over 1,000. So I love, that side of things. Season long awards. let's jump into that. Let's see if there's something. Obviously, injuries are always concerned. There's a few things. MVP is one that people like to get on early. I'm not usually a huge MVP guy. Sometimes I'll get on a bet if I like a price. Right now, my favorite is Jalen Hurts at plus 1,200. I think this Eagles team is really good. I think if they play as well as they do, I think people are going to lean him because of what he did last year, plus the fact that most people think they should have probably won that Super Bowl. So I think he's going to get a little favoritism there. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is the favorite. I rarely want to take the favorite just because I just don't want to put that. I just don't feel the odds are as good. So he's at plus 1,200. My Hail Mary throw, and this is a Hail Mary because we all know quarterbacks almost always win this award. I took Christian McCaffrey only because if the Niners is good as we think they can be and they possibly have just an outstanding season, I don't think Purdy puts up crazy stats where he's in the MVP conversation. But if the Niners is as good as we think they can be, sometimes the MVP is a team award. We've learned this. Like the guy on the best team wins. So I took him at plus 20,000 to win the MVP. Obviously, super long shot, but a $10 bet wins you $2,000. Give me some of your thoughts on both of those.
Yeah, I think the Hurts one is certainly interesting. It seems very top heavy this year, where I think is last year or in years past, you could maybe go down the board a little bit, like Lamar and Mahomes heading into the second year, had kind of paved the way for some undervalued guys as sophomores to be some interesting bets, where I feel like this year it's going to come from one of the top guys, whether it's Burrow, whether it's Herbert, whether it's Hurts, whether it's Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence. Like, it just seems like there's kind of that glut of like 6 or 7 guys that I'd be like really shocked if one of those guys doesn't win. Like, I don't think you're getting like a Daniel Jones or a Geno Smith or Kirk Cousins. Like, you're like, even though that you can reasonably make cases they're going to be good seasons, like the team as a whole also has to project well. So it's not just offensive driven, it's entire team driven award, because it generally goes to a team that is a top 2 in their conference, if not first in their conference. And you can make the case very easily that the Eagles are a top 2 team in the NFC, if not the best team in the NFC. So it's very easy to see them doing well. It's very easy to see why Jalen Hurts would have another really good year, because just the talent around him is incredible. They got a great offensive line. And again, like you said, he was the favorite heading into those final stretch of games before he got hurt. And that naturally gave Mahomes the award. So it's easy to make a case for that. 12-1, I think, is a fine price for it there. And then, talking about, I think Herbert also is one. You can get him on Caesars. I think he's 15-1 as well. So he's someone where it's like, if you can get one of those main guys just at a discounted price relative to market, I think it's good. I think once you reach like the 12 to 15-1, you can make cases for that as well. And then I think the Christian McCaffrey angle is actually like really interesting. And again, it all comes down to price, right? I mean, you mentioned that it's a quarterback driven award, and quarterbacks are going to win at a high majority of the time. But if a quarterback is not winning the award, what position would it go to? It'd probably go to a running back. And how does that running back win? Well, that running back probably has to have 1,000. Their team has to be likely a top 2-3 team in the entire NFL. And their quarterback on their team also probably is not driving that team to victory, and there's other scenarios at play liking to make that happen. So McCaffrey kind of checks a lot of those boxes that if you were to bet a non-quarterback, it's very easy to make the case that he is one of, if not like the top option to win it if it weren't a quarterback. So 200-1 is like actually like a pretty fun price to kind of throw a long shot out there, because that, like I said, it's very easy to see the Niners going like 14-3 this year. Offensive line is incredible. McCaffrey has 20 total touchdowns. He goes for like 800 receiving yards, like, rushes for like 1,200. Like, I mean, yes, you still have to compete against the Mahomeses and the Herberts and the Hurts. Like, if you're in a scenario where like maybe like 1 or 2 of those guys get hurt, or maybe like 1 or 2 underperform, and this Niners are so good, and it's just a Christian McCaffrey every single week. He's scoring and he's dominating. Like, he's at least like somewhat like in that conversation. Like, I don't know if he's going to get it, but if you're in that conversation, now what you can do with that is now you have this Christian McCaffrey 200-1 bet. And, maybe, your week 14, 15, now he's like 15 or 20-1, right? Now you can start betting some of the other players and get really good odds as well to kind of hedge out of that bet. So it adds a lot of optionality and flexibility there as well. And I think just that price is incredible. So I like it.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite bets to jump on every year is Defensive Rookie of the Year. I don't know why. I love that bet. I've hit it a couple times. I barely missed a few times. But my guy this year is Jack Campbell, linebacker, Lions. Everybody talks smack about them taking a first-round inside off-the-ball linebacker. I think this guy can make a ton of tackles on a defense that was not very good. And if they end up winning the division, it's going to get a little more limelight on him. He's plus 1,800 right now. So I like that bet. He's a guy throwing. What are some of your favorite, like just random award bets? What do you like to look for?
Yeah, I again, like my background's fantasy football, so I don't really focus a ton on the defensive side of things. But what I'm looking for is, just historically, the type of players that have won it, where they've gotten drafted. Outside of like Darius Leonard, it's really going to be a first round player. Like generally it's going to be a top 10 player. Linebackers used to win it a lot, but now it's kind of, you have someone like Sauce. You can get a defensive back to win it, but again, they have to be so good that they're winning it. It's typically going to be from someone who's putting up a lot of stats, whether that's an edge rusher or someone like Campbell, but it also comes from like really good defenses as well. Like that's generally where it comes from. Like Micah Parsons kind of transformed the defense. The Jets became a really good defense. So if you can make a case for a player being on a really good defense, they got drafted high, they're likely going to get a lot of playing time, and they play a position in which they can put up some stats, whether that's sacks, whether that's tackles, whether that's interceptions. I think you can make a case for it. And I think this year it's a little bit more wide open than it has been in the past. It feels like Will Anderson's kind of the main guy people want to bet on. But again, you have to take into account that the Texans defense might not be that good. Jack Campbell, the Lions they were a pretty bad defense for last year, but they made a lot of improvements, especially in the secondary. Aiden Hutchinson's in a second year now. They added Campbell as well. So if they're an improved unit, they could definitely do it. One of my favorite bets down the board would be Will McDonald. I wasn't super high on him as a prospect, but he got drafted 15th overall. The Jets were one of the best defenses last year. He's likely going to see playing time. He could be better than we think. Jalen Carter is another one on a really good defense with the talents as well to kind of potentially do it. Whether the counting stats are there or not remains to be seen. And so I think those are just a couple that I'd be looking at. But when I'm looking just at other markets as well, like Offensive Rookie of the Year, for example, last year there were it's a very quarterback kind of running back driven award, but we've seen Jamar Chase win it. We saw Garrett Wilson win it. And I think that comes down to a couple things. One, when Garrett Wilson won, there was really no quarterbacks. It was Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback drafted. He was drafted 20th overall. There really wasn't a ton of competition there. And for Jamar Chase to win it, he had to go and have the best, rookie wide receiver season ever. So I'm not necessarily looking at wide receivers this year. I think it's really 5 guys that it really comes down to. So I would kind of refrain from taking any long shots in this market. Specifically, it would be Bijan Robinson. We know why he would be a favorite there. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, all those guys are starting from day one. So they're all going to have an opportunity to do it. If one of them over exceeds expectations, then they're going to be highly in consideration for it. I think Jahmyr Gibbs might not have the total counting stats, even though we like him in fantasy. He might not have the total counting stats to maybe get there, especially with the touchdowns. So I think it comes down to the main 4 guys to kind of do it. And I really wouldn't bet anyone outside of that. I do like Bijan though. I think 3-1. It's just really hard to see a scenario where Bijan, as long as he stays healthy, crushes. He could easily have 1,800 scrimmage yards, 12 to 15 touchdowns. And he's just dominating while the other 3 quarterbacks aren't just winning a ton of games. They're good, but they don't have the talent around them to necessarily uplift them to a crazy level, like we saw with Herbert, or we saw with Deshaun Watson as a rookie, or Baker Mayfield when he through. I think there's a little bit more questions with those guys, but again, that's kind of how a couple markets I'm looking at and how I'm playing some of those.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Bijan. I'm usually, I like the long shots a little bit more. I'd like to play those, but I think you're right. Bijan, I feel like the offensive rookie of the year is a total good play. If they end up winning that division, even if they go 9-8 and win that division, and he's carrying the load on a team that we know wants to pound the rock, and all the other quarterbacks end up with, say, all those guys, end up with 4 wins or 5 wins, and they're last or second last in their division, I can see Bijan running away with that award. So he's one of the few guys I like, even though he is the favorite. I like that. I think this is the year to take a running back to win that. I love that thing. Looking at some season long, I was trying to look at a few. One bet I want to throw out there, actually looking at a few season long bets that I kind of like. I just like the value. I like where they're at. They're not long shots. It's just player props straight up, either rushing yards, receiving yards, passing yards. There's a couple that kind of jumped out to me, and I jumped on early. George Pickens was 750 receiving yards, 750.5 at minus 110 on DraftKings originally. He had 800 as a rookie, and this offense should be way better. I mean, way better, and he should be getting a lot more looks. I love that bet at 750. I think there's no way he doesn't get to 800 if there's not an injury. Another guy that I saw kind of jumped out to me, I saw somebody posted, I was like, oh, why am I not all over this, is DJ Moore, a guy who's put up pretty much 1,000-yard seasons across the board with terrible quarterback play. Now in Chicago with Justin Fields, he's sitting he's sitting right now at 800 yards. Even if the Bears throw very rarely, I still think that's an over. What do you think about those two receivers over yardage?
Yeah, I think they're fine. I think you make really good cases for it, for sure. I think DJ Moore's line when I checked it out seemed a little bit low, especially the talent level. But again, there are some questions with, we see receivers with new teams see a decline in production. They tend to run the ball at a very high rate. But again, we saw what happened in the preseason. He's that type of player who can be a playmaker and take any ball to the house at any given time. And if Justin Fields develops as a passer this year, then that's obviously a massive bonus. I think the Pickens stuff, I think both those guys are going to go over unless injuries do happen. But again, that's always the risk when it comes to these bets, is all it takes is one injury and now you're there. Like I said, it's one of those things where you could be sitting there week 14 or week 15, right? And you're like, okay, DJ Moore's on pace for 950 yards, or George Pickens on pace for 950 yards. And they're at 650 yards with 4 games left. And you're like, oh, this is easy. This is going to happen. And then an injury happens, or they miss a couple games, or they're sitting there in week 18 and, their team had just won a game and they're resting a player. So there's a lot of different factors that could tend to lead towards unders in that. But I think if you're looking at overs to hit, those would be the type of players that I would focus on. Guys that we have seen do before, guys with talent, guys where you can projectably make the case that their line should be much higher than what they are, because it gives you that leeway where even if they are missing a game or they're missing 2 games, if you can make the case that in 14 games that George Pickens and DJ Moore are still hitting their overs, then I think generally those will be good bets.
Is there anything jumping out at you as you've kind of looked at these preseason bets, kind of season longs? Is there anything that on your radar that you're kind of paying attention to?
Yeah, a lot of the unders I hit have moved considerably. I think Tony Pollard was one that I hit. He was at 1,100 yards, hit his under. I believe he's at 1025 right now, which I think is okay. Rashad White, I know on underdogs 780. I like his under there. I think there's a lot of opportunities where the offensive line's really bad. They aren't able to run it in a lot of the game scripts. And I think he also projects as a Kamara receiver. So where he could still be a valuable player in fantasy and on a role for the team, but he's catching the ball more than he is running the ball. So he's another one I like. Overwise, I'm really big on Herbert. I think Herbert's a good one. I think Lamar Jackson's over is interesting. At like 3,400 passing yards. I think some of those ways would be fun, but also like if I'm hitting overs, I want to hit some alternates too. So some like ways that I play those is if I really like a player and I really like their over, I'm finding like fun ways to do it. So whether that's going on FanDuel, and if I like DJ Moore, right, at 1,000+ yards, right? Because if he's hitting, he's probably going to be smashing that. Or so like Herbert would be like, okay, like if I really like Herbert for 5,000 passing yards at plus 275, or would it be something along the lines of like, yo, if I really like Bijan Robinson this season, okay, how can I find fun ways to bet him? Would it be 10-1 for the most rushing yards in the league? Would it be him to have 1,250 rushing yards at like 2-1? Dobbins as well, someone I also like really like. So finding fun ways for him instead of betting his overs, I have bet him to have the most rushing yards in the AFC North at 6-1, and I would bet him to have 10+ rushing touchdowns at like 3-1, and I'd have him to lead the league in rushing yards like 50-1, and lead the league in rushing touchdowns at 50-1, and for him to have like 1,000 yards at like 2-1, you know? So those are the ways I'm kind of playing, because I'm like, okay, I believe in this player. I believe in a lot of things. I understand there's a lot of risk at play, but the odds are already baking in that risk. And I think that if he is healthy, things will go right for him in a scenario where I don't have to worry about that risk because I'm getting 2-1 on it. So I think those would be some of the plays that I mentioned that I do like, and the ways that I am playing them.
Yeah, I love that idea. Like taking guys you really like and figuring out alternate ways to bet them and take those overs and get those plus odds. I absolutely love. One of my favorite bets I'm going to point out to people, I got from Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. He turned me on to this bet. It was Najee Harris to lead the NFL in rushing yards. It's plus 3,000. We know he's going to get touches if he stays healthy. There's a chance that he actually he's put up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. There's a chance that he gets a decent amount of carries. It's a long shot. I know that's a long shot bet, but I love it at plus 3,000. I just feel like that is something that's kind of out there, a little bit crazy, but totally could happen. Do you have any like super long shot bets you kind of like, something like that?
Yeah, rushing yards, it'd be Dobbins. I like Dobbins a lot. I think he showed a lot as a rookie, was very efficient as a rookie, and his comps after his rookie year were Alvin Kamara and Maurice Jones-Drew. So I think from a talent profile coming out of college, like he was viewed as a very talented running back. We saw him as a rookie become very talented, and the projection was that he would take the next step to be like a top 5 rusher in the league. And it was very easy to make the case that was going to happen. Obviously had a very big injury in preseason heading into his second year that took him out for the entire year. But it was a big enough injury in which his next year, like, it hampered him. They didn't give him that full workload. They kind of just eased him in. But even during that, when he didn't even look that good on film, he was still extremely efficient. We know the Ravens haven't really brought in anyone. They bring in Melvin Gordon. They still have Gus Edwards, but they aren't paying Melvin Gordon a ton of money. Like, they haven't invested into the position to have J.K. Dobbins not be the main guy in that offense. I think the offense is going to be much, much better, especially when now they have the most they've ever invested in the passing game. That's only going to open up more opportunities for J.K. Dobbins as well. And with him now being 2 years off of that ACL, he is fully healthy heading into this year. Similar to what we saw with Saquon last year. Like, Saquon kind of had that year gap where he was back, but he wasn't like the Saquon that we had known, because all these Twitter doctors and everything are saying that sometimes it takes 18 months for these guys to fully be back to who they were prior, even if they're able to play 12 months after the surgery. So it's one of those things where he's like a post-hype kind of like sleeper, where it's like, this guy is still a really talented running back. If he is going to be as good as we thought he was going to be, this is the year in which it's going to happen. And when we're looking at the talent profile of a lot of running backs who could lead the league in rushing yards, Dobbins is the one that sticks out to me as like a long shot that isn't taking into account the talent factor at like 50-1. So he's someone I really like on that market.
Yeah, I love where your head's at on that one. That to me, that makes total sense. It's great. We're gonna wrap things up here. Dalton Kates, man, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Remind everybody where they can find all your great info, where they can follow you throughout the season.
Yeah, Stealing Lines, Substack. So you can search Substack Stealing Lines. All my stuff is on there. I'm putting out some content right now before the season about some players, some markets I do like. And then as the season heads into there, Ben will be putting out his weekly over-unders, his spreads that he likes. And then I go ahead and do some player props as well, weekly player props, matchup-driven stuff that I do like, and some analysis as well behind that. And then from our subscription, you can go ahead and get to our Discord, which is more like up-to-date stuff where we notify as we're betting things. And yeah, we got a solid community there of people that are just absolute sickos and love the bet. So yeah, so you can find my stuff there, and then follow me in the X at Dalton_Kates as well. So
absolutely, I appreciate you coming on. Everybody, check that out. Guys got great information. Hope to have you back during the season. If you're a new listener to the Stew, we're going to have season prop bets, over-unders, things we like during the middle of the week. Dalton's a guy we'd love to have back on if I can talk you into it. I know you're a busy man, but I appreciate you coming on, talking kind of preseason, kind of what to look for overall. It's been a great talk, man. I had a great time. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate
you, Justin. Always fun time talking with you.
Thanks for joining us here on the Stew. You can find me at JT Orange on the X. Also, subscribe. Take the like button, give us comments, anything you want to hear about, bets, things that you are wondering, hey, do you like this? Do you like that? Hit me up, hit Dalton up. We'll absolutely answer any and all questions. Once again, thanks for joining us here on the Stew on the Dynasty Pros YouTube channel. May all your draft picks hit and the trading never quit. Check you next time, guys.
You up on trades and why you move. You ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing. Racking up points makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release. We started with the mock draft.